Good afternoon, everybody. We're going to get started. In this session, we want to describe for you a statewide grant that has been awarded to the Office of the Court Administrator and why we submitted this application and the progress we've made to implement it, because it could affect all of you if you're willing to be affected by it, and certainly your drug court participants. But we are going to spend most of our time with Judge Knisely describing how CAMO, her Veterans Court, and STEER, her DUI court, have been successful in implementing their treatment court utilizing teleservices across the state. First, I want to give you some background. Montana has the third lowest population density in the country. That means in many places services are hard to come by, and due to distance, as a result of the distances. I think it's like 15 hours from Sydney to Superior, something like that. We certainly have difficult driving conditions at times during the year, and according to most data, our substance abuse problems in Montana are as high or higher than the national averages. We have 8 judicial districts and 23 counties without coverage for an adult drug court. And in a couple of places where we've tried to implement smaller drug courts, we've not, quite frankly, been successful at doing that due to the level of capacity that we've been unable to reach. And so we came to the conclusion that we can't really justify having an adult drug court in every judicial district in the state of Montana because the volume is just not there for support by the taxpayer to keep a drug court operational. So approximately 2 years ago, we submitted a statewide BJA grant to initiate 2 projects. The first one is to provide evidence-based treatment services across the state, particularly to smaller jurisdictions that have treatment capacity problems reaching at least an IOP level of care. And so we are starting around the 1st to the middle of November. We will be projecting 3 curricula across the state. The Matrix, which is evidence-based, of course, it's the only curriculum NIDA has approved. Seeking Safety, which is a trauma and substance abuse curricula, and Moral Recognition Therapy. All 3 of those will be broadcast once a week by Boyd Andrew out of Helena, and we will include any drug court participant across the state that you all decide needs to have that curriculum or those curricula as part of their treatment plan. There is a session on that evidence-based treatment session. I'm trying to find when it is. Friday? Okay. What time is it?
It's at, I think it's during 11 o'clock to 12:15.
Okay, 11 o'clock to 12:15. It's a session on getting to IOP with your participants, and any questions you have, concerns you have, suggestions you have, we'd be glad to hear from you about. The second effort is to implement a hub and spoke system to provide treatment court services across the state to, again, those judicial jurisdictions where there is no adult drug court. And if there is a significant, a jurisdiction with significant distance problems, we certainly would try to facilitate those individuals admitting to a drug court in an adjacent district. Oh, I forgot about that. Go ahead.
Well, this is our first one. I didn't know if we.
Yeah, we can go to the next one. We're probably further than that too. Yeah, there it is. Getting to IOP evidence-based treatment, we can make it happen 11 o'clock on Friday. And so we're going to implement a hub and spoke kind of constellation for those jurisdictions where there is no adult drug court. We have developed, you can go to the next one, Judge. We have funds in the grant application to provide training and technical assistance both to the drug courts that will be receiving people from out of their jurisdiction, as well as for the participants that will be using teleservices from an adjacent jurisdiction. We have hired a statewide treatment court teleservices coordinator, part-time, consistent with the grant. His name is Aaron Wood. Aaron is around here. He's working another session right now, but if you have a chance, you can say hello or meet him. And we will integrate the teleservices option with our management information system so that we can evaluate. NPC will do an evaluation of whether we're at least achieving the same level of outcomes with the teleservices clients as we are with the face-to-face clients. The last slide will show you documents that we have now developed. The formats came from Judge Knisely's courts, and James Lopatka, the prosecutor in the 20th Judicial District, and Fred Snodgrass, the contracted public defender for the 13th Judicial District, have reviewed these documents and helped us generalize them for everybody else to use. So we're moving in that direction as well. And Aaron, the last thing I'll mention, has developed a survey for those courts that are willing to accept people from outside their jurisdiction so that we can provide any hardware, any software that is needed. And we will be able to provide, I don't know, what are they, iPads and phones for those participants that will need them doing teleservices through this effort. So that's all I wanted to go through with you to let you know that we're moving forward on this and we've made good progress. So let me introduce Judge Mary Jane Knisely to you. Don't get up so soon, Judge. It's going to take a while.
I was leaving. No, don't read all that.
Oh, I'm going to read it all. Judge Knisely is a native Montanan, graduated from Texas Christian University. I don't think we should hold that against her.
No frogs.
Frogs. I mean, doesn't that tell you something? Bachelor's degree, science bachelor's degree in psychology. Received her Juris Doctorate from the University of Montana School of Law. She clerked for the district court before becoming a Billings deputy city prosecutor, 1997. She was elected as the Billings Municipal Court judge. In 2010, she was elected to the district court bench and serves currently then as a district court judge in Yellowstone County. She pioneered drug DUI veterans mental health courts in Montana. She currently presides over a felony impaired driving court, the STEER Court, which stands for Sobriety, Treatment, Education, Excellence, and Rehabilitation, and her Veterans Treatment Court, the CAMO Court, which is courts assisting military offenders. In May 2017, STEER and CAMO were selected as NADCP Academy/Mentor courts. One was, the DUI court's an Academy court?
Yes.
And
Four in the country?
Yeah, 1 of 4 in the country. And the Veterans Court is a mentor court, and it's the only one in the country, isn't it?
Well, I think now this year they added a couple more.
Oh,
I don't know
okay.
where they are.
Certainly, she's the only drug court judge in the country that has 2 mentor courts. And what that means is people and teams from all over the country come and access her court, or at least through teleservices, access her court and learn from it and see how it ought to be done. She is the Region 10 Judicial Outreach Liaison in partnership with the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration and the American Bar Association Judicial Division. She serves on the faculty of the National Judicial College, NADCP, NDC, NCDC, the National Drug Court Institute, and Justice for Vets. She was appointed to the Montana Governor's Juvenile Justice Advisory Council, where her mission is to reduce the number of juveniles detained, diverting them to community-based programs. She recently received the State Bar of Montana Distinguished Service Award for her equal justice efforts. We are very, very fortunate to have Judge Knisely in the state of Montana. Thank you, Judge.
So first of all, now you know why I'm old, because Jeff has announced all of my dates to everybody. And I want you all to know that he created the platform for our PowerPoint. And you see that dance floor? I feel like it kind of looks like parquet. And he's brought you all here so you'll join the Teleservice dance, which if you ask my team who's here, is this sound okay? Okay, if you ask my team, who's been with me forever, and our Teleservices Extended Services Coordinator is right in the front row, our probation officer and law enforcement and treatment provider in Teleservices are back at that table so they can answer all the questions. The dance has been sort of like hip hop. So that's the hip hop floor there that you can see. We decided to do Teleservices when there were not very many drug courts in the state, and we kept getting referrals and people asking if other people could come to our court. And so we weren't really designed to do that. So I spoke with we have a data system that allows us to divide out a lot of different analytics, and started wondering how far away could we start services. And then we received and applied for and received a SAMHSA Teleservices expansion grant. And we actually have been doing Teleservices now. We're in our 9th year. So we've been doing it a while. Some years we do it better than other years, but I can tell you when COVID came, we were designed to just keep going, which is really great. We've measured our data. We have not been without problems, but you can see the reason that we wanted to do, and the reason I hope that you will be interested in joining the dance. Whoops, there went the Coke. Provide broader client outreach. We really wanted to cast a wider net. And so when you look at, and in a minute, you're going to see NADCP's equity toolkit, and you'll hear about it during the course of the week. But we wanted to provide client outreach. And when you look at equity and you look at equality, rural communities really have some pretty severe challenges. So we were lucky enough to make some memorandums of understanding. We had the chief's help, support in rolling this out years ago. He allowed me to reach out to the district judges because we have statewide jurisdiction to make a memorandum of understanding with the federal courts and the tribes so that folks could come to our steer and camel court that didn't have a treatment court nearby. So we have a full continuum of services with the exception of residential care that can be rolled out. If you need residential ASAM level of care, you do have to come to Billings or to go to residential care at another facility, then join the teleservice track. Our outcomes have been really great, and you're going to hear in a minute, because I'm going to talk quickly, from a teleservice client of ours who is in the steer court. She actually resides in Lewistown, and so she'll kind of tell you, and she's more than willing to answer your questions, the good, the bad, kind of the ugly of teleservices, but why this was a good fit for her. The access to people in our huge state is, whoops. It's not gonna move. You'd think I dumped the Coke on it. What's up? You'll move it for me? Point toward you? Okay. No dice on that, Kevin, sorry. You hate to have your technology fail when you're talking about teleservices. Can you advance my slides? I've got the oh, there's Whitney. Well, let's do this, Kevin. If you want to have whatever you prefer. Whitney, can you hear me?
Yes, Your Honor.
All right. Well, we can't see you at the moment, but I think we're going to get a chance to here in a minute. And I bet you would love to get back to work. Wednesday is actually our court day, so Whitney was gracious enough. I don't know how long ago, she'll be able to tell you exactly. She joined one of our treatment courts, but a few months ago, we asked her to talk to us a little bit about what teleservices really look like on the ground up. And I'll come back to my slides after she speaks, but I'd love to get you back to work because normally she appears in court at about 10 in the morning and now it's 2. So I bet you've got a couple other things to do. So we have a room full of people. I don't know if you can see them, but Whitney, this is our statewide treatment court conference. And there are teams from all over the state. There's drug courts, there's veterans courts, there's DUI courts, misdemeanor courts, felony courts, mental health courts, tribal healing to wellness courts, family recovery courts, which are when someone's children have been removed and they're working a recovery program. So just so you kind of know. And then, you know how our team sits, Whitney, with a prosecutor and a public defender and law enforcement and treatment, probation, kind of the same setup here, just so you know. That's who the audience is. You and I didn't get a chance to speak, so take it away.
Okay, well, my name is Whitney, and I'm from Lewistown. And when I got my DUI, it's been almost 2 years ago, and I didn't have hardly any options. I had the watch program, or they told me I had to move to Billings, maybe if Steer Court accepted me. Well, I held out as long as I could, and I got the option of telehealth, which was the best thing for me. I'm pretty stable in Lewistown. I've had my job for 4 years. I've lived in the same house for 5 years. So it has been really wonderful to be able to keep my basic needs met and to actually excel at work also. Like I said, I can't rave how good it is to be able to keep my job and to keep my housing. Kind of, there are some downfalls, but the technology sometimes is glitchy. I have made a point of meeting my counselor in person. When I first started, I had to wear a patch and do patch changes and billings, which got a little expensive. But then my PO worked with me here in Lewistown so I could do them here. So that was wonderful also. I've also made a point of, I did make a group in person. Probably about a couple weeks ago, I was working in Billings at a sister facility, and I was able to stop in for a group, which was wonderful because then I got to meet my group in person. Other than that, I think it's great. It's a great deal, especially for me. I'm 130 miles from Billings, so it provides a lot of options than just the watch program where you have to lose everything and then restart all over again.
So Whitney, at the beginning, when you entered our court, you didn't have one of our iPads, and now you do. Is that right?
I do have one of your iPads, and I use it for my group. It's great. I can see a lot better. I do have an iPad. I've been using it I've been in Steer Court since January, and I think I got the iPad like a couple months into it. So it was wonderful.
So at the beginning, you had a little bit of trouble, if I remember right, and you wrote a little paper about it, connecting with the group because other participants might be in person and you were on technology, and so you couldn't hear always as well. Can you kind of tell us how you navigated that and how the treatment facilitator helped make that work? And then I'm also interested if you wouldn't mind telling these folks about how you send in your self-helps, those kind of things. How you send in your volunteer work, how you receive your incentives, those sort of things.
Okay, so I had some issues with not hearing people in my group. The big TV was, if you didn't speak or look right at it, I couldn't hear the person. So my counselor, Carly, she put me on on the computer, which I have no problem hearing. They have no problem hearing me. I give better feedback when I can hear my group, which is good. And, they can give me better feedback if they can hear me. I send my self-help slips and volunteer hours. I'm blessed. I have a work computer, so I scan them in and then I email them to the steer coordinator.
And your work is supportive of that and your breaks for teleservices, is that correct?
Yeah, my work is really supportive of it. Another thing hindering in Lewistown is the self-help. We have AA meetings only 2 times, and they're at noon and they're at 7. So at 7 o'clock, I'm in a group, and at noon, I'm usually at work. But I can catch a Zoom one at work. So that's also really great.
Anything else you want to say? Good, bad, ugly?
I just want to say this is an awesome option for people that are stable in their community, that have jobs, have homes. I mean, that's a good foundation to start treatment anyway. So I just think it's an awesome option.
So as far as your supervision with your probation officer goes, you have a local probation officer with the Department of Corrections. Is that correct?
I do.
And
I do.
You were also on pretrial monitoring prior to coming into steer. Is that right?
I was on pretrial for just monitoring for a year. Yes.
Okay. So has that worked out okay for your probation officer to communicate with our probation officer?
You know what? I think the communication has been great. I haven't had any issues.
Okay. How often do you see your own PO?
Every 3 months is what I'm supposed to do. So I check in with him. I fill out a monthly report every month, and then I email him. And then I'm supposed to meet with him every 3 months.
So how many documented days of recovery time do you have today?
Oh gosh, I should keep track, but steer court wise, since it's got to be almost 2 something.
Okay. I bet Officer Eggers will look it up for us while you're here, but then you call into court and you participate in the docket. You're in phase 3, is that right?
I haven't got that notification yet.
Okay, so, but you come every other week or once a month is kind of how this has been going lately.
Yes, yes.
Okay. All right. Does anybody have any questions for Whitney about her participation?
How does she do the drug testing in those?
So Whitney, Judge Murnion, who's on the eastern part of the state, is asking, how do you do your drug testing?
Okay, so I have a drug patch that I get changed every 2 weeks. And like I said, my PO has found a program. They got a grant or some type of program. So I just go here in town. And then for my alcohol monitoring, I have a check back through Billings that Steer Court provided me.
Officer Eggers, did you have something you wanted? Did that answer your question, Judge?
Yes.
Okay.
And just to further elaborate, she's on the enhanced.
Wait, let's let Jeff come over there. Mr. Kushner, come to you with a microphone.
Thank you. She's on the ETSS program that each region across the state through the Department of Corrections has. And the local field office thought that that was the best option for her. She has that patch replaced every 2 weeks. It's done right there in her home office. It's an option that's available in a lot of the communities that DOC is now contracted with.
And while you have the microphone, do you just mind talking about how you communicate with her probation officer and get the notes and things into our system so we're ready for court to see Whitney on her progress?
Yeah, and Whitney does have 245 sober days as of today.
Plus her pretrial time.
Thank you.
Whitney's probation, I am in constant contact with the local field offices. It gives them the opportunity to still be supervised in their local community, and I can report that directly back in. If they need to have more contact, they can make that contact with me. The home visits, the employment contacts, that way then that rural community keeps that established relationship with their local probation officers, and it works quite well.
Thank you. Anybody else have a question for Whitney?
I'd like to know what 12-step meetings you're utilizing. I guess you're doing that teleservice-wise then, right, Whitney?
Yes, I am. I found a group, it's called Promises to Live. They have noon meetings. When I can't leave work, sometimes I can just duck into my office. So I use Zoom also for those.
Okay, thank you.
Have you gotten better
Yep.
at technology? Sorry. Whitney, has your
What now?
have you gotten better at technology, or were you great at it to begin with?
I was pretty good at technology, actually. I have kids and grandkids.
Fair enough, and that's been pretty useful to us in assessing who can be on this track. Jeff, I think Judge Cuffs. Oh, not loud enough. Stand up. Zach.
Whitney, hi there. Zach Sherbo, coordinator with the treatment court out of Libby. I'm looking for your advice to others, potential participants in that, in embracing teleservice everything. To do this.
Okay, well, my first thing is you can't be shy. You kind of have to just dig in. It's kind of scary a little bit. I do recommend that even if you're doing teleservices, I do recommend you meeting your counselor in person if you can. And also to, meet your group members at least once. I mean, I know it's not an option for everybody, but I found that very valuable because then they can put, I look different, and then, people meet me in person and then, you get a more personal connection. Another thing is, sometimes groups are combined. So don't be afraid to say, hey, I'm here, I'm up here. I think it's a great option, especially for people that have stability, jobs and houses and family. And even the AA meetings on Zoom, that was a scary experience for me. I didn't know what to think, but they were very welcoming and very supportive.
Perfect. Thank you. Anybody else? Okay, thank you so much, Whitney. We appreciate you joining us today. And I bet you have stuff to get back to. So we'll see you next Wednesday.
Thank you very much. Have
Let
a good day,
Kylan
guys.
know if you need anything, okay?
Okay.
Thank you.
Bye.
Oh, did you have
I forgot to mention, Judge, that this grant is inclusive of the tribes as well. So if we can help the tribes with teleservices options for their participants, we certainly will do that as well.
Great, thank you. So Kevin, do you think there's a chance on my slides, or what do you think? Oh, let's see here. Okay, so while we're getting that going, I'm going to talk about all the different places and again, that we've been able to do teleservices. You heard, we have the Camel Court, and we've actually had a client go as far as Romania on active duty and be able to participate in treatment with his provider and to dial into court. That was kind of remarkable to make that work. We've had clients in the Flathead that we've been able to pair up with veteran mentors. We've had peer mentors. We seem to have a great contingency coming out of Lewistown now. Am I moving all my slides? Or are you? Okay. All right, well, we'll start with the objectives. Anyway, Wolf Point, we actually had a farmer who did a couple of, and Officer Eggers would remember better, but a couple of the phases in the vet court in person and then return to his home community, and he would fly some tiny little plane when he would come back and forth when he had to come to teleservices. So I guess what I just would want to say is, just try this. You can meet your capacity. You can meet your clients where they are. You can do your therapeutic adjustments in their local community and from the docket and give this a whirl. It's better to have the right number of people and not exclude folks. For example, if we had a female veteran who had post-traumatic stress and needed, say, a seeking safety gender-specific class. We might only have 2 female veterans at one time, but we've been able to connect to other parts and gotten referrals from other judges across the state. Or, you know, if we had people who were post-watch, they'd already been to the watch program on the number of DUIs and they were out on probation, you know, to do more of a criminal thinking errors class that was for higher risk folks. It just works. It works, but you have to try it, and it's certainly not the perfect deal. So you can see this was the objective of our presentation, and I'm going to speed it up, but we're going to talk here a little bit about evaluating this and measuring this and how you want to start from the beginning of keeping your data. We know Montana's huge. These, I think, are some of the more current stats. You know, we drive 750 miles to our high school football games. We go all over the place. And a couple of the judges here have made referrals to our courts, and I hope that you get some kind of communication on how people are doing and what that kind of looks like. If you don't, our extended services coordinator is sitting here in the Montana hat in the front row, and his hat matches the slide, so he can certainly update you on anybody that you're interested in and how they're doing. So we appreciate the referrals. Why do this? Again, you know, why wouldn't we connect these folks and give them a chance at treatment courts? You're all here because you know they work better than the regular criminal justice system. This is some of our targeting slides. This is a veteran slide. We have the vet court, and you can see that we've had clients from many of the reservations. A lot of military folks rise up to serve, so we've been able to include them. Sitting in our front row are 2 of our veteran mentors. They've been able to reach out to mentors in other parts of the state that are same branch of service or maybe same MOS or something, so that they can be paired up to people. We had a client who went all the way through the program from Kalispell, and thanks to them, we were able to find a veteran mentor. We also have the impaired driving court, impaired driving offenses, drug driving, impaired driving, criminal endangerment that involves kids or crashes. Those folks can come into the court. Our impaired driving numbers in Montana, and we're very fortunate to have a highway patrolman who's sitting back by probation, who's been on our team how many years, Eric? Sergeant. So with that connection, we have a connection to the roadway all over the state. And he has connections onto the federal and Indian country lands also, so we're able to get information that we need. Montana, unfortunately, continues to have a lot of overdose, and that number continues to rise. So when you're targeting people for teleservices, just remember these numbers and don't say no. Try Jeff's dance. So here's the standard, and you've heard a lot, I'm sure, about high risk, high need already, so I won't spend a bunch of time on that. But, you know, unless people are statutorily disqualified, I wouldn't say no to them, or clinically disqualified. The level of care for the grant is going to be IOP level of care. So if you have somebody that isn't their proper ASAM level of care, maybe this isn't the grant project and the hub and spoke model isn't for you. But clinical and statutory disqualifications come from a risk assessment that's validated, and you want to start by keeping that data. Our probation officers, we have both a federal and a state PO, they do revisit those assessments on an ongoing basis to modify kind of the clinical plans. There's the equity and inclusion standard. We would encourage you to take some time at your staffings or at an admin meeting to always look through the best practices and the standards, but you can see why we don't want to shut people out just because there isn't a treatment court nearby. In Montana, it's not realistic right now to have a treatment court in every corner of our state, but this grant is going to really allow us to expand. Go. All right, so everybody can't work technology. You've seen me up here asking Kevin for help. If you don't have some sort of an assessment that asks these people, are you able to text? Do you have bandwidth that's appropriate? Can you take a picture of your self-help meeting? Can you take a picture of your volunteer work? Do you have a quiet location that's confidential so you can really do treatment? Because you can't have your whole family in your treatment group. It isn't appropriate for other clients. Can you learn? It's interesting, in our veteran population, we've had participants who are up to 91 years old. We had a Korean War vet, and we have younger folks. Some of our aging veterans really were scared of technology at the beginning, and they got some help from our coordinators who took them through training, and their kids who helped them, and they are able to do this technology. But you do have to do an assessment. When Jeff mentioned the documents that were remodified or modified for everybody else in the state, we're happy to take you through that. Consider, go ahead.
That is one of the documents.
Yeah, the assessment. And it's pretty simple. It's a one-page thing. Community resources, again, everybody can't be in teleservices unless you have some sort of resources. If you don't, and this is the city of Billings, and we like to think of ourselves as rural, but when you consider the rest of the state, we are certainly not rural. So you can see our courthouse in this picture. It's important that the whole team understand and be trained in motivational interviewing, because as you know, when you're on a screen, and I always tell my kids, be careful when you're on your screen, just remember you're on a screen, but you want to be able to do just what you would do in person. You want to be able to motivate these people, meet them where they are, make them forget that they're just on a screen. And you can see law enforcement listed here right at the top of this, and the jail staff. They're usually the first crisis intercept point, probation, even before the referral comes to you. So motivational interviewing techniques are super important as you're keeping them engaged with your in-person clients. Okay, there's our team. We've had the same one pretty much, with the exception of a couple new coordinators, for almost 12 years. Law enforcement, our team has been really fortunate. We have a patrolman, as I introduced Sergeant Gilbert here with the Highway Patrol. We have city police, an officer who's a veteran, and we have a lieutenant with the sheriff's department who has a strong connection to the jail. So that cross communication with law enforcement going across the state, they have access to records the rest of us don't have access to. They're able to do virtual compliance checks and assist probation. In a minute, I'm going to talk about, and I think it's maybe one of the next slides, but about how well virtual check-ins actually ended up working during COVID. We weren't sure what that would look like. The coordinator is definitely the air traffic controller of what this is going to look like. They conduct the assessment. They manage the referrals from all around the state. They help these people if their internet goes down. They get them a new cell phone. They send them an iPad. They manage whether or not they're getting the incentives or their certificates that we hold up to the camera to motivate them in, if it's mailed to them and if it's coming and they receive it. So the coordinator does a lot. They also keep data and enter data during court and run analytics on that system so that we know if we need to modify our program so that these participants are doing as well as our in-person clients, or some of them have actually done better. One of our treatment providers who does teleservice treatment is here. I think what he would tell you is people almost forget the stigma that they're in treatment and they relax a little bit when they're on a screen. So prosecutor and defense are the mouthpiece of the legal piece. They go through the contracts with these clients. Teleservice, they work with the prosecutors and OPD or private defense attorneys in these other communities. They go to the Bar Association and explain this. You heard Mr. Kushner say that our defense attorney assisted him with modifying the documents. They come to due process hearings with the client who is appearing virtually if they're going to end up, and Judge Mansky's here, who was going to present on some of the legal ethics and the due process components. I would encourage you to go to that. Judge, we do those hearings virtually sometimes, and defense and prosecution are there presenting at those hearings, assuring that those constitutional rights are protected. We have witnesses appear virtually, and it seems to work out pretty well. The judge, this isn't for everybody. If you're not comfortable, if your technology fails and you dump your Coke on the stage and you're going to cry, this might not be for you. But really, the more often you do it, the better it works. And sometimes in Montana, our technology's rough, and you might have to just put them on the speakerphone and hold them up to the phone on the bench. It's better than nothing. We know that no matter what we're doing here, if we aren't doing harm, it's better than doing nothing. So we've had to have some graduation virtually, and sometimes the clients who've been virtual have chosen to come down in person and bring their folks and have some of them appear on Zoom so more people can attend their celebration. They read their papers that might be a sanction or an incentive on the goals that they've met. They've done their SMART goal assignments virtually. We mail coins to them. We hold them up. We ask them which coffee card they might want, or we have some kid prizes that we give out, or we might have a Frisbee or some set of golf balls as an incentive to incentivize and really personalize what people are doing. We've tried to be culturally competent and offer things that mean something to everybody in that world. So I can't remember, did the sanctions and incentives session happen this morning? Okay, so pretty much Jeff created this really great list. Did they get that? That new list the list you made years ago? Well, okay, well, Jeff has this really great list, so ask him for it, but it talks about, have we done everything we should do before we terminate this person? And Jeff actually created it years ago, and I think they've modified it. It used to be in DOS. No, I'm kidding. And it's really pretty now. But it's really valuable when you're speaking to people over teleservices and motivating them and including them. It's just like they're in the courtroom. There's no reason you can't say to another participant, hey, Judge Halligan, what do you think about the presentation that Jeff just gave on where he's at 60 days? Do you have any thoughts on that? Or what would you say to the brand new client who's observing and considering coming in to steer? And that individual in the courtroom in person can stand up and be heard by these people and can connect virtually just fine. I thought you were going to do it for a second. The treatment providers, of course, you want to have confidential platforms. You want a continuum of evidence-based treatment. You want to be able to do individual sessions. We've been able to offer pretty much every session a full continuum of care. And Walt, I don't know if you want to stand up because you really briefly and tell about what it's like to be a teleservice counselor all the time for our clients. You've been with our court for 12 years. But you got to talk loud or I have to give you a microphone. You know, those therapists are quiet.
I don't know, can you guys hear me back there? Okay, good. So, teleservice help for me really started with the pandemic when it really kicked in. We had to stop doing in-person groups and start doing teleservice. Fortunately, I'd already had some experience, utilizing Zoom at the time, and so it just really kicked in, starting to do the groups telehealth and meeting with people virtually, and it has worked marvelously.
How do you get people to engage over the TV who don't trust you to begin with or trust other strangers?
You mentioned motivational interviewing. I use a lot of humor. That's just my personality, and that engages people almost immediately. And then just getting to know them. I do the aftercare relapse prevention groups that funnel out of the VA, and I start kind of at the beginning with them, to get to know each other kind of session, telling them a little bit about myself, learning a little bit about them, asking them about what they've learned in their treatment, what's been beneficial, what they'd like to learn more about. Just a lot of interviewing questions, getting to know them, and pursuing that relationship. And usually by about the third session, they're starting to relax a little bit. Another thing that helps is because they're funneling out of the VA, they already know each other in the group. So I really haven't welcomed very many strangers into my group. Most of them know other people coming into the group. But the groups have always been very welcoming of people coming in, So,
and then you just put your treatment notes into a database so that the rest of the team has it, or if there's an alert or something emergent, you send it. Is that correct?
Yeah, treatment notes go into DCCM, they're shared with the team, and they become part of the team staffing every week or whenever the participant go
Do you
to
do individual sessions and groups?
individual sessions, groups, assessments, family sessions, everything that's up there, grief counseling.
It's kind of fun because when you have somebody appearing from their environment, you get to see kind of what their environment looks like. I mean, we've seen some really beautiful Native American art on the walls. We had a client who fired up his chainsaw because he forgot he was at work and on Zoom and hadn't muted, but he was in his vest. And during this time, it was COVID. Our drug testing agent drove up and he said, "Judge, do you want me to work? Do you want me to do my UA? Or do you want me to be in court? Where do you want me to be?" And I was like, "Please do your UA, turn off your screen, and then come on back, and then we'll finish up." So it's been interesting.
It is different seeing people in their home environment when you're doing therapy, particularly group therapy, because everybody's sharing those home environments. We can all see each other on our screens, so you can tell when someone's getting a little too comfortable on the couch and their eyes are starting to nod off. It's like, "Hey, Jim, you might want to sit up a little bit."
It's
So-
been fun to have the kids too, when the kids were being schooled at home during COVID. I mean, if there was any great part of that, they can join in, they can share, they can pick the incentive and know it's coming in the mail. So it's been great. Thank you.
You're welcome, thank you.
Okay, so here's that assessment I was talking about. You can see we go right down to when do you get a lunch break? What does this look like? Because we really want to create a treatment plan and a teleservice plan that works for the clients so that we can meet them and encourage them where they are. So what needs to be modified for them, things like that. And Jeff has those documents, I think, somewhere that he created off of this. So ancillary services, we didn't really shut that down either. We were able to expand our yoga, our life skills class. We have a budgeting class. They do all of that over teleservices, criminal thinking, nutrition, health. Some of them even did a cooking class virtually for other people. So, you can have actually a lot of fun with this. You can tell that I like it. And I'm not going to tell you it's a replacement for in-person, but it's actually works pretty well and it lets you serve a ton of people. And then peer support, they can do peer support virtually. They can also, it allows them, and we're fortunate we have a system that also reaches out to people 24/7 for case management. If you need a food box, if you're struggling that day, you can put something into that system with our treatment provider, but this has allowed us to expand that. We use a system called GOMO. But their peer support folks can meet with them. There's videos online if they're struggling with a certain topic or thinking of something that's troublesome, or they're having trouble sleeping. You hear about turn your phone off at night if you want to go to sleep. Well, sometimes if you're new to recovery, that's not always the best answer. Finding a connection is a little better. So, supervision, pros and cons, certainly not in person. You're not in their house, you're not at their employment. But we've been really lucky to use FaceTime, Google Duo, some of those kind of things. That should say Duo, it says Docs, sorry about that. But probation has been able to do virtual visits and say, open that drawer, or zoom in on that really great certificate, or let me see your yard that you cleaned up, or take this phone out to your car, open the door of that car. Why is your briefcase in there? You don't have a driver's license. Or something great. You can catch them doing great. You can ask them to open the refrigerator in case they need food. Again, it saves time for probation. They can be typing notes while they're doing these virtual visits. They don't have the travel time. I can say, hey, let me talk to your spouse. Are they around? I think that they're driving you these days. How are things going? So I think that probation and these folks back at the table would be able to tell you what these connections can look like, but don't be afraid of the supervision piece either. And then you want to train your team if you're going to do this. Onboarding and cross-training is essential. The peer-to-peer, and we'll help you if you need help. I don't know exactly what the Steering Camel Court's role is going to be in the rollout of the Supreme Court's project, but I think Jeff will probably let us know. But just know we're here to help you. If you're having trouble connecting with a client, or if things are going well, we can also connect them with another client too. Okay, now I have sanctions and incentives. You can do this. You can be really exciting. You can spin this wheel virtually. You can clap. They can see you. You can be loud. You can have everybody hold up their stuff. They can do virtual claps. You know this from Zoom. But you can have a lot of fun if you have a lot of energy. And my team speaks a lot during court. They just say, Judge, may we address the participant directly? And they stand up and they talk to them and they get in front of the camera, and it works perfectly fine. Actually better than fine. Sanctions are a little tougher, especially like a jail sanction. If you've had a positive UA and some of those kind of things, we don't look to go to jail immediately. But if you're going to add a GPS or you're going to add community service, you sometimes don't want to give your client a huge heads up if somebody's coming to take care of that piece for them. Yet at the same time, the virtual visit allows them to do a lot of therapeutic adjustments that are not sanctions. Maybe read their letter of apology to treatment because they didn't log on, they blew them off, they slept through their alarm, whatever that might look like. So they can sure do the sanction virtually as well. You might have them come more often. They might have more sessions in the court because virtual is kind of a gift. It saves them time and travel and things like jail and prison and the watch program. I just mentioned the therapeutic adjustments, so I won't talk about those again, but you can sure have them scan in their journal notes to treatment if they need to, or any of those kind of things. So sustainability and monitoring and evaluation for this cannot emphasize enough what keeping data looks like from the very beginning. We administer a graduation survey to our participants. In a minute, I'll show you the slide, but you can see the Shannon Carey back in 2008, and it's continued that if you want to run a great court, you want to keep data, and you want to have it accessible, and you want to be able to pull it immediately and take it to your team every single week. Or for example, if our sergeant needs to go to the highway patrol and encourage them to add officers to treatment courts across the state. He wants to know what your recidivism rate looks like within a couple of days. He wants to be able to pull drug testing right away if somebody's been picked up in another part of the state. You don't want to wait and have a bunch of delay. And so this has been great for us statewide to have these services. We have a separate track, and you can see some of these are the data elements. You look at your referral cohort, you don't take everybody in. Where were they on a motivational scale? Well, as we know, we don't care if they're motivated at the beginning, but they do have to be willing to log on. We care if they're motivated at the end. How far away are they, and has it made a difference? We've had clients in phase 5 who've actually been allowed to leave the state. We haven't done that otherwise, and you heard the Romania story. But how far away are they? How many days are they in the phase? Is it taking longer because they're on Teleservices or they've had technology issues? What are the retention rates? How quickly are we getting their test results? We have been lucky because our main drug testing agency in Billings also has some satellite labs, but our probation officers have connected us both federally and state to getting the drug testing results very quickly and putting it into our information. We have the probation contacts, and then, like I said, the pro-social outcomes are in the system. So they do their volunteer projects. These folks were actually, Officer Eggers is going to have to help me. The client, I think up in the right, did this project where he was planting trees in Arizona. Is that right? In his final phase. And then the other client down in the left, our female client, was with her grandchildren in Billings doing like an Earth Day project. Is that what that was? And they scanned in those pictures. So they, we had their pictures with permission. They've done their volunteer presentations. You can see the map. That was out by Hardin, which is about 45 to 60 miles. That was a run that a client did. He scanned in the results of his marathon. We had another client on Earth Day build some birdhouses. There's just really no reason that you can't get all the information via technology that they would give you had they shown up in person. I think that's it. So Jeff, do you want to say anything or answer the questions? I think I'm a couple minutes ahead. caught us up.
The only thing I was going to mention is that you mentioned that most of these people test out ASAM criteria-wise needing IOP services. And again, the first part of this grant award is to implement 3 evidence-based practice curricula, which are those 90-minute sessions. So there's 4.5 hours a week potentially to get your participant up to IOP level. So between that and your local treatment program, you ought to be able to get people up to an IOP level. Any questions from anybody? Yeah, Judge.
So Judge Knisely, you said that most people are on the patch and have some other kind of testing, but I don't think I caught what that was.
So I think it would probably depend on where they were and if there was a drug testing lab nearby. But if you're super remote, we've used the patch and we use a system called Check Back or Scram. Either one, kind of depends. But to be on Check Back, you have to have a phone.
Okay.
And it pings you several times a day and you blow into this alcohol device. The patch is changed out locally. Whitney had to keep coming to Billings a couple of the first weeks and getting a ride she was one of our first people to use a patch, honestly, because we'd had clients we've had state employees in this treatment court who travel the state, who've been with the state. We've had Department of Transportation employees who travel the state with a crew. And so we've had to figure out where are they going to test it, kind of what is this going to look like? But it's worked out really well. I mean, Helena has, Missoula, larger cities have labs. And so sometimes that's part of the assessment. Is this going to work? How high risk are they?
So I think she mentioned that she might be paying for the patch, or at least the changing out of the patch. And so I'm just wondering about costs for testing.
So our clients in our courts actually they pay fees. The statute, the Drug Court Accountability Act, as you know, allows clients to pay up to $300 a month for programming. Our clients pay $50 a week. We have an indigency program if they can't afford it. Sometimes they can't in the beginning, for sure. And we've used some grant monies to supplement that. We've used other fees to supplement that. I don't exactly remember her payment scale. She was working, but I believe she has always mailed, and we actually have an online payment system. Our fiscal coordinator is sitting here and he takes online payments and posts those. I think she pays online, but she does pay for the patch. She pays for the patch herself. They pay for their, 90 days. The court pays for some of their alcohol testing, but then they pick up their drug testing pretty much right from the get-go. If they can't afford it, they do community service in their local area, and then we supplement their testing.
You could also use the mini grant monies for that if
Oh,
you
right.
wanted to.
Sure. When we started, there wasn't a mini grant, but that's a great idea. Will?
Yes, you said that one of the assessment criteria was that they were in IOP. I was wondering what,
I didn't,
No.
for Jeff's grant, that is the level of care that they've determined that they'll offer to people. Our clients can they've run the gamut.
okay. I was just curious if they were reassessed and needed a higher level of care, what that would look like, so.
That'll be interesting. I'm sure that may or may not come up, but hopefully they can
Well,
augment
I
it.
thought you answered that, Judge. If they needed residential treatment, then they would go to residential treatment and then come in. Or actually, my preference is that while they're in residential, they're also in drug court. And teleservices wise, you keep in touch with them so that they're more comfortable coming back and coming out.
And I may have misspoken. I didn't want to get it too complicated, but we might have a client who goes to a VA residential care, even in another state, and then they come back, or they appear from, say, Fort Harrison. Every DOC facility here in every VA has teleservice equipment, and so do even places, some of our clients might go to Wyoming treatment facilities, and they can still dial in if they're in residential care. Also, MAT and psych services, super easy to be done. They also can appear in the post-acute withdrawal groups. Carlisle Duke runs those classes at Rimrock for us. So yeah, they can augment their care, and it sounds like we're gonna kind of start with an IOP matrix type based cohort to try this first. So that'll be great. And I think we tried that several years ago, and it actually worked really great, but we didn't have good solid federal funding to keep it going and to roll it out. So it's great that we have Aaron and Jeff and everybody's gonna make this official. So if you need anything, let us know.
I just got a notice yesterday that the 36-bed, used to be Watch East, is now an open residential program for anyone needing residential treatment that tests out at residential treatment. So that's going to be another good resource, and I hope I'm sure they'll have Teleservices capabilities there as well. So I'm kind of looking forward to that new capacity.
It's called Badlands Recovery.
Badlands Recovery.
Saw that. That's going to be great. If anybody ever wants to dial in, part of being the training courts is that we can arrange for your team to come. We can arrange for you to dial in virtually if you want to see what this kind of looks like. We're happy to have you on a Wednesday morning. So thank you so much.